So I recently subjected myself to the 2007 Ed Gein movie, and after watching the 1974 feature titled Deranged, the 2000 movie titled In the Light of the Moon, and the Monster series on Netflix, this is by far the worst and least accurate depiction of Ed Gein when looking at all of them. I wasn't actually going to cover it because I thought it was a bit ridiculous, but this is the last movie that's based on Ed Gein that I haven't covered, so I thought it would be wrong if I didn't. This was a direct-to-DVD release almost 20 years ago, and after watching it, you can most certainly see why. Within this video, I'm going to be comparing the movie to the true events and also the Netflix series, and then I'll determine how accurate it is and also if the movie's worth watching. Plus, I'll be ranking every version as well right at the end. Here is the 2007 Ed Gein movie versus the Ed Gein Netflix show. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. The similarities. Well, to be honest, there weren't actually that many similarities to the real-life case or even the Netflix series. The main ones that I picked up on was that the film itself was set in Plainfield. Ed lost both his mother and his brother, so he was on his own in his farmhouse, and Ed had a form of schizophrenia where his mother was appearing in front of him and ultimately telling him to kill. We saw this occur most when he killed Sue, the tavern owner. He was also seen to be robbing graves and doing as he pleased with the bodies and using their skin to essentially create a suit. Some of the similarities from the movie to the real-life case is that there were two characters that were supposed to represent the two confirmed killings that he'd done. One was Sue, the tavern worker that was supposed to be Mary Hogan, and the other was Vera, the hardware store owner, which was Bernice Warden. They did also keep the fact that the character which represented Bernice Warden, Vera, had a son that held the title of Deputy Sheriff. As in the movie, Bobby Mason was the Deputy Sheriff that had his mother go missing due to Ed Gein, and she ultimately ended up being killed. We also saw that Vera's body was found in the same way that Bernice Warden's body was found. That was pretty much as far as the show went in terms of being similar to the real-life case, and even when comparing it to the Netflix show. There were less similarities to the real-life case than what the Netflix show had, which is interesting because the Netflix show exaggerated quite a lot too. The differences. When looking at all of the depictions of Ed Gein that we've had, this movie is definitely the one that exaggerated the most and was the most fictitious out of them all. For example, there were 5 victims that Ed Gein was seen to kill in this movie. From the young girl at the start, which you could maybe argue is the babysitter that he was rumoured to have killed in real life, which featured in the Netflix show. There was then his assistant in grave robbing called Jack, which was just an outright lie. The graveyard guard, and then Sue and Vera, who were based on actual confirmed killings. Then, when looking at the way Ed Gein was depicted in the movie, it was nothing like the real-life Ed Gein. It was as if there was no effort whatsoever to try and make Kane Hodder appear like him. In fact, Kane Hodder was the wrong casting in general. Ed Gein was 1.7 meters tall, and Kane Hodder is almost 20 centimeters taller than him at 1.89 meters. Plus, Kane Hodder has quite a large frame, whereas Gein didn't have that at all. So, scenes of Hodder carrying the likes of Erica over his shoulder with ease is something that I couldn't imagine the real-life Ed Gein doing. Steve Railsback in the movie from the year 2000 is the exact height as Gein, and Charlie Hunnam, despite standing at 1.83 meters tall, he almost gave himself a bit of a hunch which allowed him to have a smaller appearance. The tone of voice and accent wasn't accurate either, as it didn't feel like the native accent of the region. When it came to the motives of Ed Gein in this movie, that was also different to the real-life case and the Netflix series. The Netflix series primarily focused on Gein wanting to bring his mother back and recreate her, hence why he was digging up the graves and why the victims he killed resembled his mother. This is something that was in line with the real events. Within the movie, whilst the two victims, Sue and Vera, resembled his mother to him, it wasn't really about bringing her back, it was more so about him feeling like she was taken unfairly from him, and that he wanted to show others how it was unfair to be taken. His mother was also seen to be saying in his manic episodes that he needed to eat up and be big and strong like his father, which wasn't something that was quoted or known for Ed Gein to say either. There was no inclusion of his mother enforcing the belief that women caused the sin of man and that he shouldn't enter a relationship with a woman, so the motive was completely different. When looking at the way that Ed killed his victims, within real life, Mary was killed with a pistol, which wasn't the case in this movie and also wasn't the case in the Netflix series either, so they both got it wrong. And then, when it came to the killing of Bernice Warden, she was killed inside of her hardware store with a hunting rifle and then taken back to Ed Gein's shed. That happened in the Netflix series, but within this movie, that didn't happen at all. It seemed like Vera was killed inside of her home and then taken back to Ed Gein's house. We just simply saw her working at a hardware store, so we knew which real-life victim it was supposed to represent. Alongside many of the killings and the way that they were carried out being fictitious, the story of Bobby Mason and Erica was purely added in for dramatic effect. This movie had Ed Gein taking Bobby Mason's wife-to-be and the daughter of the sheriff as hostage following them having a car accident and her being in a critical state. It also showed him patching her up and comforting her in the woods, saying that he wasn't going to kill her. This movie most definitely had more differences than similarities, and even though right at the beginning of the movie they utilized real photos of Ed Gein and newspaper articles which was showing us the real monster and what he did, even at the end going on to tell us what happened to the real-life Ed Gein, it just felt strange that they exaggerated the truth, included more killings than what they needed to, and leaned into the differences more than the similarities. My criticisms of the movie. Well, first off, this movie literally got a 3.7 on IMDb, and I actually think that's kinda generous. A straight-to-DVD movie back in the day could often provide some great watching on your own or even with a bunch of friends if it was considered bad, but this one didn't even do that. This movie didn't resemble Ed Gein or his crimes in the slightest, other than the fact that it was set in Plainfield and he killed a tavern worker and a hardware store owner. The killings weren't in line with how Ed Gein killed his victims, nor were his motivations either. This movie basically used Ed Gein's name in order to get away with creating a horror movie rather than creating an accurate depiction of the killer. They simply just named the character that didn't resemble Ed Gein at all, Ed. This didn't have the tone of the type of horror film that it should have been. If anything, it was more of a slasher type film. It didn't get across the type of person that Ed Gein was. It wasn't haunting, frightening, and it didn't allow a deeper look inside of the mind, which is something that all of the other depictions did. This is a true surface-level movie that wasn't only factually inaccurate, but from an entertainment point of view, it fell short as well. My ranking of the Ed Gein depictions. So now, when looking at the 4 versions of the Ed Gein movies and TV series that we've seen, I thought it would be worth ranking them from worst to best. Coming in last place is the 2007 movie. Hodder's depiction doesn't resemble Gein at all, there are a ton of creative liberties and it's not factually accurate at all. In third place, I'd probably put the Netflix series. Whilst it's enjoyable to watch and it has dark tones to it, it's all over the place in terms of narrative structure, with it jumping forward in time and including inaccuracies. Plus, Hunnam's voice that he gave Gein is quite difficult to get past. In second place, I'd have the 2000 movie. Steve Railsback is probably the best depiction of Gein when it comes to appearance, and the movie was relatively accurate in what it was telling us. It's the easiest to digest and it doesn't feel like it's trying to exaggerate for the purpose of entertainment. Then, in first place, I'd have the 1974 movie called Deranged, which is based on Ed Gein's crimes. From a creative point of view, it's one of the most frightening depictions of Ed, introducing us to Ezra Cobb, and I feel like it really gets across the mindset that he had. The schizophrenic state where his mother's influence really had a hold of him. From a visual perspective, it was also pretty grim to look at, as it didn't hold back when showing us what Ezra Cobb did. The music that was beneath it too added a real haunting backdrop for the most part, and it was definitely the creepiest setting. So with regards to the 2007 movie, all I'll say is it's definitely not worth a watch. So, there you have it, the 2007 Ed Gein movie versus the Ed Gein Netflix show.